Rejoice, cat lovers! Kirara joins the Genshin scene as a bubbly manifestation of Nekobata, traveling the world as a cute little cat box. YouTube frogs, welcome to a complete 3.7 Kirara guide covering the most essential information you'll need to pounce all over your enemies. We'll be covering what her talents do, how to play her, constellation value as a 4-star, optimal weapons and artifacts, and her best team synergies alongside a gameplay showcase. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like and a sub on the channel, and without further ado, let's begin. From C0 to C6, the core of Kirara's kit centers around her dual ability to generate shields and also roam the world as an Amazon delivery service. Her talents at a glimpse offer 100% certified authentic catfighting, 100% uptime shields, ability to climb mountains in overworld traversal, and a big dendro bomb for unsuspecting enemies. You can think of her primary use cases as a combination between Sayu's role and Layla or Zhongli's shield, with a splash of Xlice bombs in her burst. Let's take a deeper dive at her abilities. Normal charge attack. Unfortunately, they are mostly aesthetic and won't actually serve much purpose in battle. Of course, if you do plan on using Fav's sword, then you'll have an extra excuse to catfight. Elemental skill. Kirara's first priority talent investment, Meow to Your Kick, is responsible for both her shield generation and also her overworld delivery service. As this is her most important ability, there's a lot to unpack here, so sit tight. At a glance, this ability has lots of mechanical similarity to Sayu's E. The tap form is a brief AoE dendro kick and generates 3 dendro particles on hit. The hold form transforms her into a cat box. Like Sayu's ball form, it has enhanced overworld traversal features and can uniquely scale vertical walls and cliffs with more ease than the average character. Unlike Sayu's ball form, if you don't press a directional key, the parcel will stay still and won't just keep going, but it will also not deal damage. To deal damage and therefore apply dendro, which is the important gameplay part, you can give your directional keys just some tapping. You don't need to hold it, you can just spam tap and it'll do the job. So right when she transforms, she'll generate her base shield. When she hits an enemy, she'll deal dendro damage to them. At the beginning and every 4 seconds, she can generate 1 dendro particle on enemy contact. At the end of her cat box state, she exits with the same kick as her tap E form and generates 3 dendro particles. So, just like Sayu's E mechanics, doing a short hold E and exiting the form manually is a very efficient use of her skill. It generates 4 total dendro particles, 1 for a cat box enemy contact and 3 for the end kick, and only needs a little extra effort and a half second more on-field time. It's a very solid trade-off for 1 extra particle. Going back to her dendro application, her hold E deals damage every 0.5 seconds, and her application follows normal internal cooldown. So, every 3 hits or 1.5 seconds for Kirara, she'll apply dendro, which is twice as fast as usual characters. While this seems really nice, the trade-off is that she cannot perform any other attacks in this state. So usual off-field element appliers that require normal attacks to activate won't be able to do anything here. As she's doing damage in her holy form, her Ascension 1 passive will also stack quickly. This reinforced packaging is basically another extra shield with the same properties as the one that she summons that will generate after her hold E ends. The only difference is its strength. 1 stack is 20% of the original shield, 3 stacks, the cap, is 60% of the original shield. She gains 1 stack every 0.5 seconds when she deals dendro damage, so it only takes 1.5 seconds to get a fully stacked reinforced packaging. This activates when she kicks out of her cat box form, and in doing so, summons another shield of up to 60% of the original shield strength with the same duration of 12 seconds. Basically, it's 2 shields in 1 E, if you consider the base shield and then the reinforced packaging when it's over. Pretty nice. Obviously, if there's no enemies around, like if you use it in Overworld, there are no stacks because there's no enemy contact, so no second shield. Now we can dive into skill scalings and cooldown timings. All of the damage it deals is attack scaling. You won't pay too much attention to those. Her shielding is completely HP scaling. The base shield strength is 14% max HP plus a flat amount at level 6. Max shield is after at least 1 refresh. It can stack up to 22.4% max HP plus a flat amount. With an average 35,000 HP Kirara, her shield strength ranges from 6k to 10k and has 250% dendro absorption. Her shield duration is 12 seconds. Her overworld cat mode is 10 seconds. The total cooldown for this ability is 8 to 12 seconds, and if you're hold mode, it counts down only after you've ended the mode. Shield uptime is a perfect 100% regardless of what you do. If you tap E, then your cooldown is only 8 seconds and you have a 12-second shield. The shield lasts longer than the cooldown and can easily be refreshed. During cat form, which is the 10-second duration, she'll have her base shield of 12 seconds. When that form ends, A1 will generate another one at 20 to 60% strength, adding onto the previous leftover if it wasn't destroyed. This refreshed one has a 12-second shield duration, and her max E cooldown is 12 seconds, which means she can repeat the process with basically 0 loss. So no matter what you do, as long as you're in combat, her shield uptime should be 100%. In the overworld, like we mentioned, A1 passive may not activate, so post cap form, you may not have one. That's expected. Surely you don't need a shield if you're not fighting anything, right? And lastly, Elemental Burst, Kirara's Grass Bomb. This ability basically is just extra Dendro application, summoning 6 mini bombs on the floor after the initial package. While its initial multiplier is quite impressive, it's unfortunately attack scaling, so it won't actually do that much damage if you're just prioritizing her shields, which I think you should, but we're at the stage of the game where you can build however you want, so if you want to build DPS Kirara, have fun. This ability is very mechanically similar to Xlice or Aloy's E, and its bombs can be grouped in the same manner like with Kazuha. If they aren't grouped and do not contact an enemy, they'll explode after 12 seconds. With a 60 energy cost and 15-second cooldown, her energy requirements are actually quite low, especially considering that her short hold E is essentially 9-second cooldown, producing 4 Dendro particles. You can get 2 of them per burst rotation. With her A4 passive, she actually gets a slight damage boost to her burst and skill damage proportional to her max HP. The downside, it's almost unnoticeable. With even 35,000 HP, she's barely getting 14% damage boost to her skill and 10% damage boost to her burst. As both of these are attack scaling on their damage, this is basically a dead passive. Because if you wanted burst or skill damage, you would just run attack and then her HP would be nothing. Alright, so talent investment is pretty straightforward. Elemental skill over elemental burst with normal charge being useless. Technically, only the elemental skill needs to be invested for her shield scaling. Elemental burst does gain the damage multiplier, and normal charge attack has very limited use, especially with no Dendro infusion. If you want to try some burst damage Kirara, then level her burst accordingly. So, how would you use Kirara? In most situations, she's a very efficient off-field character with a decently strong 100% uptime shield. You short hold her E for maximum value, throw out her burst for extra damage or Dendro application, and then leave. That's basically it. But because she has limited Dendro application, if you're just running her for the shield, she's not ideal for bloom-oriented comps like Burgeon and Hybrid Bloom besides Nilou. I would say more of Kirara's use is in Quicken-related comps, where the need to apply Dendro is not as strict and she can easily do that every time she has her E. Running her in the Nilou comp allows her to utilize her Necro Parcel state a bit more though. You'll be able to apply Dendro at a very quick consistency, but watch out for your team's Hydro application, because in this form, she can't activate Xingqiu Yell on off-field burst for more Hydro application. So in Nilou's comp, she'll probably be in her Necro Parcel state for a maximum of 1.5 to 3 seconds to get the most value out of her A1 and some Dendro application. Out of combat, be the delivery cat that you've always wanted to be. So, as with most 4-stars, they tend to unlock most of their meaningful value with Constellations. With Kirara, she's actually got like 80% of her kit built at Constellation 0. Her Constellations mostly just add some quality of life, but not gameplay changing value that make her much more valuable to invest in. C1, probably her least value constellation. This just increases her Dendro Bomb count from her burst by up to 4 at 32,000 HP. Her burst starts at 6, so this can increase it to 10. C2, this brings the same value that C2 Zhongli brings. Allows your co-op allies to also get a smaller shield if you run into them with your Necro Parcel. Yeah, you gotta give them a boop in co-op and then they get a shield. C3, C5, +3 to skill and burst. C4, highest value constellation in my opinion, where any character with her shield gets an additional coordinated Dendro attack every 3.8 seconds on normal charge plunge attack. Given the timing, this will of course apply Dendro on whoever it hits. It's great for both Quicken and Nilou Bloom teams and further improves her off-field utility. C6, 100% uptime, a 12% damage bonus. It's simple as that. You'll always have this if you're using her skill or her ultimate on cooldown. So overall, I think that Kirara's constellations aren't actually as noticeable as other 4-star characters, and that's because her value is pretty solid at C0, which makes it good because that means investment at C0 is not that bad. Weapons. When building Kirara, she primarily only cares about 2 stats: HP and energy recharge. But because her burst energy cost is only 60 and her skill particle generation is fairly efficient, energy recharge will kind of be already solved for you from substats and maybe her weapon. So you'll need to think about her HP and maybe some elemental mastery. Obviously, if you want to go spread DPS Kirara and focus on her burst damage, go for it. You'll then want attack, crit, elemental mastery as with the usual Dendro DPS. So because she focuses so heavily on HP, our sword roster only has a select few good choices. Key of Kajna Suit. This is Nilou's signature, has the greatest synergy, HP stat stick, and elemental mastery transfer to teammates. The downside, it's not really achievable right now for most players, since if you have this weapon, you probably use it on Nilou. Freedom Sword. Elemental Mastery doesn't really matter for her. It's the passive that grants some form of utility that's useful. Quicken teams will be able to utilize the attack and normal charge plunge bonus. Livonia's Sword. This is the obvious go-to for supports, but it's not actually for herself, since she won't really have many energy issues. That being said, why not? We don't really have many great sword options in general, so yeah, use it if you need to. Sapwood Blade. Energy recharge stat stick that fulfills 100% of her needs and also drops a leaf that grants elemental mastery to herself or a teammate. Good for both Quicken or Nilou Super Bloom. Sacrificial Sword. Pretty solid option for her. Allows you to double tap E or combine with her short hold E for lots of Dendro Particle generation and also an immediate max strength shield since Sac Sword allows 2 of her base shield to stack back to back right away. For weapons, that's really it. We do have other Elemental Mastery weapons beside the Freedom Sworn, but Kirara herself isn't going to be stacking Elemental Mastery, so these weapons have so-so value for her if they don't provide team utility. If you do decide to stack EM on her, then of course choose one of the following. Zyphos Moonlight, Iron Sting, Alley Flash are all weapons in this category. For spread Kirara DPS, prioritize your highest crit rate, crit damage weapon to enhance overall spread damage. Artifacts and stats. So Kirara has quite a range of options that really depends on the team you're running her with. If Kirara is supporting Dendro DPS like Spread or Nilou Super Bloom, 4-piece Deepwood is best in slot. If Kirara is supporting Electro DPS like Aggravate, 4-piece Noblesse, or 4-piece Instructor is best in slot. If you don't have any artifacts left because all your other Dendro units are using them, feel free to run a 2-piece HP combo. Main stat choices. So Kirara got the expected dual builds depending on the HP tank or spread DPS. So Shield Kirara is running triple HP with optional crit rate on the mask, where you won't need an energy recharge timepiece because her requirements are below 140% and either the weapon or just substats will be more than enough. Triple HP will maximize her shield strength and that's all that matters. She doesn't have healing, so no healing bonus is needed. If you do decide to run just Shield Kirara and you don't have enough crit rate substats, then that's why the crit rate mask is an alternative. If you want to run burst DPS Kirara, then run straight attack Dendro crit. Don't try to build hybrid, just go all in on her attack scaling and forget about her shield. You know, it's actually a shame that her burst isn't max HP scaling, because then you could actually run a hybrid build with HP Dendro crit, but that's life, I guess. Recommended stats. So first thing I recommend is level 90 Kirara. Just like Nilou, we want her base HP maximized, and she also has HP % ascension stat for even more HP. If you do decide burst DPS Kirara, level 90 is still nice for base spread damage. In general, we're going to be looking at her total HP pool, amount of recharge, and that's it really. Obviously, have a decent crit rate crit damage ratio if you're going spread DPS. HP. At level 90, triple HP main stat, 35,000 plus should be really easy to get. If not level 90, I'd expect at least 30k. Recharge, anything above 120%. Mine is super high because of extra substats and Sapwood Blade. If you run a recharge weapon, you'll likely be above 150% naturally and should almost never have burst uptime issues if you plan on using it on cooldown. Crit rate crit damage. Aim for your usual 70-140 if you want big Dendro bombs. This is only for spread DPS, not for the HP build. And that's basically it. HP based supports tend to have some of the lowest stat requirements in the game, which is good. Low investment friendly, very good, yes. Team comps. Kirara's primary role is kind of like giving a Dendro version of Zhongli's shield to your team minus the resistance shred. It's got essentially 100% uptime in combat, is decently strong, and has 250% effectiveness for Dendro damage, which is efficient for taking blooms. You can basically view Kirara as a 4-star version of Baiju, with a stronger and more consistent shield but no healing and no Dendro driver capabilities. So, we take where Baiju is used, which is, well, basically every Dendro team, Quicken or Bloom related, and remove the teams that would rely on a Dendro driver. This essentially takes down all extensions of Bloom, which are Hyper Bloom, Virgin, and their variations. We are then left with 2 specific team categories, which I would consider Kirara's best synergies: Quicken and Nilou Super Bloom. So Quicken teams with Kirara will typically rely on just her for survivability, meaning that it may be less autopilot due to no access to healing. However, due to her efficient Dendro particle generation and also really easy shield setup, rotations with Kirara are usually a lot quicker and not particularly burst reliant. So the minute you see her shield expire, you know that her E is available for another go. With a 12-second duration shield, she can protect most rotations, but will leave an opening at the end of Cyno's burst, as his can last a maximum of 18 seconds. These Quicken teams will primarily consist of Electro main DPS plus Kirara and double flex, or Dendro main DPS and Kirara plus Electro sub DPS plus flex. Relying on Kirara as the sole survivability member of the team can open up double Electro and double Dendro hyper offensive lineups, and if the team consists of the same fast rotations as Kirara, it can kind of end up as a quick swap team. This leads to high flexibility in her available team comps, opening up all available spread aggravate DPS with the caveat of no healer. The demos that you are currently seeing are with C6 Yai Miko, so the damage and speed of the clear is much faster than what you should personally expect. Unfortunately, I cannot untoggle Constellations, so please understand that this is not your common Yai experience, and the idea is to showcase the type of active playstyle you should expect when running with Kirara. Quick swapping with her is natural, and leads to fluid rotations that are best utilized if no single character is hogging on-field time. Even though she does provide a shield, it is not as strong as Xlice, so being proactive with dodging is still recommended. The best bit of practical advice I can give is against enemies that are really brutal with their damage output, for example these consecrated beasts, play like you don't have a shield. This way when you do inevitably get hit, Kirara's shield will save you when it's needed. Then we have Nilou's Super Bloom. In this particular comp, Kirara's role is the exact slot that Baiju would occupy, just with no healing. As a 4-star, she's much easier to obtain and also completes a lot of budget comps with Nilou that don't rely on any 5-star. These budget comps do not use Nahida, Baiju, or Kokomi, which have been the staple 5-stars for this comp since the release of Nilou. If we only include 4-stars besides Nilou, we have the Kaveh variation, which is Kaveh and Kirara and Xingqiu alongside Nilou, or the Yaoyao variation, which is Yaoyao plus Kirara and Xingqiu and Nilou. Evidently, the sacrifice of these team comps is that the damage cap of the Dendro cores is much lower, because you won't have access to Nahida EM transfer or Baiju's Bloom increase. Both of these budget variations aim to incorporate a main on-field Dendro unit that can utilize Kirara's shield on top of their bulkiness against Dendro. Yaoyao has plus 50% Dendro resistance during her burst, and Kaveh's passive talent heals him when he takes damage from a Dendro core. And finally, if you do decide to run an offensive burst DPS Kirara, she'll have the best rotational value in quick swap quicken teams. You can include her in the same quicken teams that we just mentioned, and either accept her reduced shield strength as your team's only source of protection, or you sacrifice a 4th slot for a synergistic survivability unit. And that concludes an essential guide to Kirara for patch 3.7. Harnessing all the feline energy, Kirara keeps your teams alive while also serving as an overworld guide through mountains and valleys. While there are a bit of talent flaws, I find that her shield strength and consistency to be really easy to use and fairly valuable for the team comps that she benefits the most. Her capabilities at C0 are fairly solid, meaning that as a 4-star, she's not as constellation dependent as other characters, joining Yaoyao as a decent investment even at C0. Good luck to all gamers wishing in 3.7. I hope that all Kirara wanters become Kirara havers. Thanks for watching, let me know what you think of her in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Take care.